I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so excited today to be talking about the wonderful film Downtown Owl. We are joined today by actor, co-director, and producer Lily Rabe, along with writer, co-director, and producer Hamish Linklater. And Lillian, starting with you, I wanted to talk a little bit about the journey of this film coming together because I love how it came from you doing voiceover work on the audiobook originally, and then writing to Chuck, who is the author of the book, with how you
Yeah.
fell in love with it. And at that point, you hadn't produced or had any inclination towards directing or gone through any of that, but you basically just said to him, if the rights ever become available, I know someone else has them right now, let me know. And when he reached out to you kind of a few years later saying that they were in place, what was that kind of excitement, but also like a little bit of a shock in going through that, like, oh, now I have to do the thing that I said I wanted to do, and really just learning from the ground up as a producer and a director from that point forward?
Yes, all of those things are, are true. And I felt all of those things. It was like the way I just, it was so clear I loved doing audiobooks because I was doing the theater and it was like a way to make a little bit of cash. And it felt sort of like scuba diving and you go into this, it felt so intimate with text and I don't know. I really got hooked on it. And then with that book, I just had that feeling so strongly and they weren't available, like you said. And when I got the email from him, I think it said, he's very, it was very succinct. It's like, I've been following your career and I'm really a fan. If you're still interested in the book, the rights have become available. I'll give it to you for $1. If you're not, have a nice life. No worries, or something like that. And it's that thing that I think happens often as an actor where you sort of get the job and it's ecstasy and terror. It's that real moment of kind of confrontation that happens. And so I did feel that certainly, but I just thought, yes, I have to now take the next step. And then it was a long next step. It was a very long road. And Chuck was so patient. And I kept thinking he was just going to say, this is just taking too long. And I'm not, but he never had even a flicker of that. He just hung in there with us. And, I think in the book, she's like in her early 20s, right?
Yeah.
And time was going by and I kept saying like, Chuck, and he said, no, it has to be you. It has to be you because the essence of her is you to me now. And so it can be this and it can be this and this part of her life. And so anyway, but it was, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it weren't for Chuck, I don't know if I ever would have become a producer. And now it's something I'm really so interested in doing and directing and more. But I kind of have Chuck to thank for all of that.
I really love that. And for you, Hamish, obviously, in terms of writing the screenplay for this, you're always thinking very visually and interweaving those details as a writer to begin with. But then once you realized that you and Lily were going to direct this together, I was interested in how that really changed the way that you were thinking about the visual aspects of the writing, because initially you weren't envisioning the two of you directing, and you even went through the process of going out to some other directors first.
Yeah, in writing the adaptation, I just wanted to sort of show that the book could be cracked because it's a complicated novel in that like the main characters don't really meet in the novel, and it's a lot of vignettes and it's beautiful and the characters leap off the page and they scream wonderful, hilarious things at you. And there are all these set pieces in there that you want to sort of do. So my real goal in the adaptation was just to show the eventual director that it was breakable, downable, and that you could make this into a movie. And so, but I was definitely like seeing it as I was writing it, and then I think enough people said to us, if not this, what? If not now, when? And so we're like, okay, we'll do it.
I love that, and especially the way that visually throughout the story as well, you're really kind of carrying us through the experience of going into this town and just the day-to-day life and all these characters through the perspective of Julia, even to the point where sometimes we don't see another character kind of straight away if she's not seeing them fully straight away. And I was interested in how that really shaped a lot of the choices that you both made together as directors in how you set up the camera and how you told the story.
That's such a wonderful question.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a really nice, the first time we sat down to sort of like shot list the thing, and sat down with our DP.
It wasn't even the DP who ended up shooting it.
Oh,
it was
right.
Because of Philip, right? It was our first, so it was like that long ago.
Yeah, and it was just lucky that without us actually talking about it, we were like, oh yeah, and then this place and this, and then we'll have to cover this there, and we had the same shot list in our heads, which was,
and that was just like it was so rough and sort of early broad strokes, and so that felt good because that could have been like a real record scratch.
Yeah.
If wait, no, it can't be that. It can be anything but that. But we really it was there so similarly, and that was really nice. And I think, it's like the experience of the town and of the people that Julia is meeting. It should feel so subjective and specific, and it is through her lens, but we really wanted, the town is kind of the lead of the movie. It's like that's that character, and getting that right and making that feel generous and open to the viewer so that they can have their own experience of it, felt really vital.
Yeah.
And I love some of the choices that you've made as well when you kind of step away from traditional camera setups and kind of have different movements, such as when Julia first goes into the high school, even going into a high school and walking down the hallway as an adult, you still kind of feel the intensity and the observation of the students as if you were a high school student yourself, or when Vance first walks into the bar and everything kind of slows down because that's how it feels in her mind. So what would inform the moments for you both when you would make those choices to step away from traditional camera setups and angles?
We really wanted to objectify Henry Golding's butt. But
it's not even his butt. It's everything.
Well, it's everything. Oh, it's his front and his rear. But yeah, I don't know. It's like stuff. Yeah, I mean, we came up with shots that sort of delighted us, and sometimes, we would take big swings and be like, oh well, that scene actually won't end up in the movie. but I think there's so much, because Lily and I came up doing theater together a lot, but I think there was a lot of faith in playing on the day, and finding finding the flow of the thing. I mean, we had this very sort of quite rigid edit of the movie when we started shooting it. And then things fall away, and you just like go with that, and then things emerge. Like, my God, those buffalo, her riding in that truck and that through those buffalo, that was a scout day. We had planned on them being on horses, and everyone kept saying the only trouble is that the bison will kill the horses. So insurance-wise, you may also perish. And then we got to this, and we went to this one buffalo place, and they were like, yeah, you can use my horse. And we were like, oh, okay, maybe we're going to use this horse and just hope for the best. And then we went to another place, and they had this fucking huge truck, and it was just the Titanic. I mean, it was like, as soon like the idea of her riding this truck into these animals, these mastodons. I mean, it just was so exciting. I think that was like, I don't know if you felt like this a little, but like the way you would sort of fall in love with a scene or a shot, or it was like so surprising.
Yeah, that day was full of magic. So many of them were, but that one really, I can like feel that day still.
Everyone was giggling.
It was freezing.
It was so cold.
Really freezing. I had there was that moment where he gives me his gloves because I had my bare hands, and I think it was like actually free, like below zero at one point. And so my hands were gonna get maybe stuck to the metal of the and so then we kind of thought, okay, he'll give it. And then it ended up being like this wonderful I love the moment where she kind of has to give him the gloves back, but that was all because my hands were going to stick to I was not going to have skin on my hands anymore. But in terms of like the shot that you're talking about in the school and the, you know, and the shot of Henry, I feel like Hamish and I are also similar in the way, and we did first work together in the theater. And you know, one of the reasons I think Hamish is one of the great actors and Shakespearean actors is because he breaks all the rules and he's completely fearless. And if you try to tell him, well, this is how it's supposed to be done, he sort of looks at you like, what is that? What do you mean supposed to be done? It's Shakespeare. It's, you know, so I think that we went in there with that energy too, of feeling like, well, this is the lens that we're in love with because it feels like it holds the soul of the movie. And then we want this shot and this shot. And maybe we had to fight for certain shots to be in there because it didn't feel conventional or, but I'm so glad we did fight for those things because it just, not only did it align with our sensibility, but I think also Chuck's sensibility, which is so specific and weird and wild and sort of not rule following.
Yeah. And I love that you were both mentioning theater there as well, because I wanted to talk about the storm sequence, because there's something that feels very much of the essence of theater in the way that you've told that story on screen, and also very much like the idea of living in the experience of reading the book at the same time, you know, with breaking the fourth wall and having it be these character monologue pieces. And obviously that's such a huge crux of the film at the very beginning, at the very end. And so that has to work for the film to work. So how did you set about landing on those choices?
Well, the direct address that's in the movie, I mean, is in the book. That's like those characters, we go in the book into those characters' heads as they're stuck in this terrible peril. And I think most of that and you know, we knew as we went out to try to get financing for this film that we weren't going to be making, you know, The Day After Tomorrow or something, that budget wasn't going to be available to us. And we thought, what a wonderful opportunity this financial limitation is, because we can say, hey guys, this is like, you know, this is like the beginning of Henry V, where you say, imagine you're on the vasty fields of France, okay? And when we have like 5 guys up here, imagine that there's a whole army. So imagine this huge storm comes through, and then when we actually go to shoot a scene with Ed Harris, an actor of an august experience, and we're like, gosh, okay, so if you don't mind crawling through this snow, and he's like, fucking throw more snow in my face, let's go again, because he's an animal, because he's come from the vasty fields of France and he's ready to go. I mean, we were so lucky with all of our cast that they just put themselves in these freezing conditions and made them often look colder than they actually were, because the snow sometimes didn't show and the wind didn't show. But they all showed up. I mean, Ed was just, he like we could do like a whole nother movie of just Ed army crawling through the snow, and us like throwing more snow in his face to keep him from getting angry.
Oh yeah,
at
because one
us.
of the snow blowers broke, so we were just
Yeah,
holding
we had a
monitor.
snow blower, and actually that day it actually was cold, and it was so cold that the snow blower froze. So we became it froze. So we became the snow blowers, and all of a wonderful crew, like just shoveling snow in Ed's face. It was wonderful. Yeah, but I mean, necessity, mother invention, and 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 it really felt like a way ultimately that we were going to be able to draw the audience in and make them complicit with the sort of storytelling.
And to have, something I love so much about the book is that the storm is it's the first thing you meet is the storm. And that always felt so, it shouldn't feel, there's no kind of, it's not a twist. It's the greatest surprise. And yet it's the least surprising thing, which death is. It's like the great surprise. That's the least surprise. It's the most inevitable thing. And so having that storm and all of the things that storm represents, just kind of there the whole time, and finding a way to do that. Yes, with not a lot of cash for snow was a wonderful challenge. We wouldn't have wanted all the cash.
Who wants that snow cash?
Yeah.
It's more fun if you have to physically throw the snow at Ed Harris. But it also sounds like there were some elements in building that scene out as well that came from the research that you were both doing into kind of what that storm would look like, and even just the essence of the lack of visibility and the fact that what's that specific sound that you're going to hear, because you're not going to hear anything else at any point when that's billowing around. And so how did those kind of technical elements come together through the research?
Really, it was trying to honor the what Chuck describes, what Chuck has the characters describe. We thought the language was so beautiful in the way that he said it's like being hit, and so it was just like trying to figure out how to make those words make sense,
and the sound and the darkness and the sort of it's like we think about a storm as so much of something coming in, but actually there's the absence of so much. There's the absence of light. There's the absence of being able to hear anything other than this sort of vibration of this thing. And so those felt like really exciting ways in, but definitely all of that came from the way Chuck describes it and has the characters describe it. And there was a similar storm. I mean, the storm is based on a storm that did happen. So
an Alberta clipper that came down from Alberta and slammed that area. But yeah, you don't see it. It's called a whiteout prairie blizzard. I mean, if it's whiteout, you don't see it. It's all got to be oral. Yeah, it's neat. It was neat.
And in telling this story as well, we see Julia kind of come in as the central character and go through this journey of trying to reinvent herself. At the beginning, it's this idea of nobody in this town knows you. You can be anybody that you want, but very quickly seeing elements of her past creeping into the present, and that informing how she's emotionally dealing with everything around her. So how did you both set about just narratively finding, that journey of these are the moments where she feels like she can escape her past, and these are the moments where it gradually just starts to build on top of her, that she's never going to be able to do that. It's part of who she is at every stage.
Yeah, it just made me think of that, the lecture that we were talking about authenticity. Which might be too, we might want to, I don't know, cut this out because it might be too, but we were just talking about this idea of how people use the word authenticity and being one's authentic self. It's like such a buzzy thing to say. And I've certainly said it, but it's like, well, but you are always your authentic self. You know what I mean? Like
your authentic self may be insecure. It may have like your authentic self may use a slightly British accent some of the time when you talk about novels you like.
But also that you may, I so identified with this idea of, and I'm actually so glad that I wasn't 23 when we did it, or that she wasn't 23, because she's lived enough life where she really has, she's experienced loss, she's experienced falling in love, she's experienced tremendous disappointment and all of those things, but there's still so much ahead of her. And it is like, it's just that vulnerable moment of, can I redirect things? Can I make a left turn? And maybe I'm just dipping my toe in, or maybe this is like a complete reinvention. But just that, those opportunities for like a bit of a free fall in one's life, and how I think it's so identifiable, the desire for that. And then the inevitable surprise of where you land or where it takes you, and sort of how you confront yourself in those moments, because not only can you not escape your past or who you are, but maybe you don't want to entirely.
Yeah, I think it really sort of opened up for us with this idea of like the great part of high school and the bad part of high school. But when you're in a small town, we both grew up in really small towns, that sometimes like high school doesn't end. If you stay there, like that sort of drama and that vitality of every Friday night and every night, every day, walking down that hallway, like how tinsel happy that life is, and to step back into that, it has its downsides, it has its, gosh knows, those hormone crashes are intense, but the highs are so exceptional at that age. And so I think that was something when we were talking about the town, and we wanted to be really careful that the town was awesome that she comes into, that we didn't at all want to feel like we have like that the movie has a sort of flyover state attitude about the inhabitants of Owl, but that actually it's like at night the owl flies. I don't know, that it was just like a really and so I think Vanessa has the line, "You're back in high school now, and everybody's looking at you through rose-colored glasses." I think that's that would be an awesome thing to feel. So that's what we tried for.
Absolutely. And there's also so much in terms of, I think for all of the characters in the film, that they just want to feel something that feels real, to feel really present in their lives in the day to day, and also just to have other people notice them and acknowledge them. And so when you have that kind of central storyline with Julia going through all of those pieces herself, how did that then open up the space in which you were able to then look at, what does it look like for a high school student? What does it look like for Henry Golding's character, who, was the big football star in high school and now doesn't feel like his life has lived up to where he wanted it to be, to a point where it actually feels like Ed Harris's character is the one who kind of understands it all the most.
Absolutely. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he does. I mean, there's also like such a strong moral universe for each one of these characters, and I love that the kids are like trying to deal with this bad coach, this bad man in their midst, and then it becomes confusing for Julia. She thinks, oh, but what if they are actually in love? What if love is the most important thing? Uh and and then yes, Ed's character is the one who's sort of like trues the line.
But it's like, because I think Horace he's just more honest than everyone else. And there's that wonderful line that Julia says on the football field of, but it's true, why can't I say it if it's true? And it's like, I mean, I was talking about authenticity. It's like the difference between being authentic and being honest, maybe, that I feel they're struggling to be honest with themselves, with other people, but also to be received honestly, and to sort of, and you know, when Horace loses it's okay to talk about kind of spoiler
Yeah,
alert.
we can talk spoilers.
Yeah. When Alma dies. Well, yeah. And he just speaks about it so honestly. And I find it's so moving, that part of it, to me. And I think, you know, on the one hand, it's like, yes, it comes with age and it comes with life experience. But I also think, you know, those moments can come to anyone at any time. Like, you can have these really honest experiences in high school, in your 30s, in your 40s, and then more towards like the end of your life. But chasing that feeling, or, you know, the relationship that Julie is in, it's not that it's bad. It's just, it just feels dishonest to her. And so I think that thematically, and I know, you know, we're going with her, we're experiencing it through her, but I feel like, to your point, you sort of are surprised along the way that everyone is kind of on their own version of her journey.
Yeah.
And she kind of blows her presence, and this, you know, when something outside comes into something so insular, like a small town, shaking that up, it's like, it sort of explodes the town in this amazing way. And I wonder if some of those characters, like if she hadn't come into the town, would have confronted those things in their own lives. And I find that so moving. And yeah.
And also, I mean, in talking a little bit about the emotional tone in which you leave Julia at the end of the film, I love that there's a hopefulness for it, but it doesn't have to be that her entire world has shifted upside down and changed from what it was. And it's really her going through this arc of realizing it's okay to put myself first, you know, because there's that phone call that we see her have with her dad at one point, and it's kind of, I'm always acquiescing to everybody else. Why can't anyone show up for me in the same way? And then we see her do that through the process of the storm. And so how did you kind of set about creating that emotional tone and the place that you wanted to lead her to towards the end?
I don't know. You know, when we shot that scene, that phone call, there's like a lot of, I hope there's like a lot of emotional intelligence or emotional rationality that might sort of intellectually seem kind of irrational, but but there were some of the stuff which isn't in the book, which that Julia has, is just that yearning. And I think that was part of like the conversation we had with Chuck and with the book and making the movie. It's like, he's such a bard of Generation X. And, you know, it's supposed to be slacker. It's supposed to be whatever, you know, and sort of cynical. But it's actually so romantic. And he has such wild ardor for music, for film, for sports. And but because he's so encyclopedic about it, it's sort of wrapped up in a very thin tissue of nihilism. So we sort of just, you know, rip that away and show the beating heart of it, which is like, see me, come over, be inside my pounding chest with me. That's that's what we were doing there.
And what was that space for you, Lily, in terms of just finding the performance for Julia in kind of carrying her through to that space?
I think so much. It was such an amazing experience playing her, because I had spent so much time with her, more time really than one normally gets as an actor. But she surprised me maybe more than anyone I've ever played, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is the experience that I had. She kept surprising me. And I think it's because of what Hamish is talking about, and that sort of it's like that kind of razor's edge of that where I think Chuck's writing really lives, where it's so funny. It's so funny and it's so smart, but it's entirely unsentimental. I feel like he's so allergic to sentimentality, which is the thing I love about him. And yet his actual heart and I think hopefulness, he might hate I say that, but feels so profound to me. And I felt that way about her. So that, you know, she's reckless and she's lost and she's kind of exhausted and muddling through, but her passion for being a person and for figuring it out, and her desire to connect and to really understand what it is to love someone and what it is to be loved by someone. And I don't even just mean romantically, I mean in all of her relationships. It's like she's so hungry for it. And so having the experience of kind of being surprised by how far she pushes that, I think, as an actor, was really rewarding and scary, but surprising. And
I will say this, you know, Lily had given birth to our third kid 2 weeks before we started shooting this movie, before cameras were rolling on her.
Maybe 3 weeks by the time, because we had the little push, but yeah,
3 weeks. 3 weeks. And then she's playing this part and she's directing it, producing, and it's like a very, very funny performance, and it's a very, very emotional performance, and it's an astonishing performance. But she was sort of like living really three-dimensional, every genre moment in her life. I mean, this could easily be a horror story moment, and it's certainly a fucking farce that we're doing this with, you know, with this tiny infant and 2 other children, and you know, chasing bad weather as best we can. Like, it's snowing and it's miserable out. Let's go. This is perfect, you know. But it's like, this is flesh and blood in Technicolor, and that's where she was at that moment, and it was really amazing that we got to roll camera on it too.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I love how everything worked out in the coming together of this film. And it really is a film that has so many intricacies and things that just kind of sit with you and resonate a little bit, even after you walk away from it. So congratulations on such a great film. And thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you so much for all of your thoughtful questions. I love talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.